Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, February 27th, 2024 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Director April Chan is absent and excused. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman,
Present.
Director Katz,
Present.
Director Lenny,
Here.
Director Patterson is on his way, Director Young,
I'm here.
President McIntosh.
Here. So let's move on to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Are there any online speakers, Madam Secretary?
No online speakers.
All right, I do have two speaker cards in-house, and the first is Joey D. Smith. And Joey is speaking on security and worksite safety. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning to
Good morning.
you, President McIntosh, Board.
And just a reminder, each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak, and the secretary will call each speaker in the order received. I've already called Joey, and followed by Yvette Rivera.
Okay, thank you. So I'm standing here before you with Eric Larson, my peer with the union. First, I want to say thank you very much for approving the funds to respond to the damage that happened to the building a while back. That got something going. All four of our locals have been invited to meet with district staff. Started off with General Manager Chan, as well as our David Briggs and David Woodard and David Cook in security. We've had a lot of discussions, and there have been some improvements as far as moving forward with looking out for the security and safety of the work sites where our folks are working. A couple of things have come up positively. We are working with the community safety group, in that we, as in the district, okay, Clorox, Kaiser, other businesses, trying to get things doing better around here as far as violence and crime. We've got security escorts in place. We have had a couple of discussion forums with Oakland PD, but it still causes questions with many of the employees as to when people are accosted and attacked, just being out trying to get lunch. Yes, we're talking about safer ways of commuting to and from this building and other places, but also situations of having their vehicles broken into on district property. We're wondering, where does the priority for the safety of all the employees come in when it comes down to certain things that, well, possibly could have been prevented, such as keeping a security officer in the security spot near the fence, so that, we used to have someone there, but we haven't in a while. This has emboldened people in their desperation to make their ends meet, I guess. But the only reason why the second time they broke in, they didn't get anything is because someone just happened to be at their car, and it scared them away and realized, oh, and they ran out of there. So that being said, if I may, we really would like some priority to getting repairs and improvements done. The windows, we got that going. But fence repairs, that we understand that may be an aesthetic situation, but the safety should prioritize aesthetics. We also have other ideas that have been shared with us that we will continue to share with this group so that maybe cameras can be updated sooner than later.
I need you to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that being said, just want to keep you updated on what's going on here because there's a lot of the employees that are feeling very frustrated about the fact that these things are still happening, and the fact that they are. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. And I just wanted to come up with Joey Smith as the other AFSCME local. The two AFSCME locals here are in solidarity
Say
with
ditto.
concern with the security and safety of our members here at the district. And
Thank you, Eric.
increased need for a security presence. Thank you.
Come on up, Yvette.
Thank you. Does the timer start? Let me know. Thank you. I have 4 things I just want to touch base on. I'm going to be providing at the 1 o'clock meeting several documents. One is the amended tort complaints for 2022-L-219 and 2023-L-184. I'm also going to provide a document that I emailed everyone, my response to Cindy Sharon's deadline that she sent me yesterday, that I have to respond to questions about my classification study by tomorrow, when the union was given March the 8th to respond. And I want to say to John Coleman, congratulations that you get to retire and that today's, I believe, your last day, or coming up in the week. It's going to be your last week. I'm glad that you get to make East Bay Mud pay you more in retirement than what you were told, what you were told at the end instead of what you were told in the beginning, despite how much hell you and your wife went through. I'm glad it worked out for you. I want to touch base on the Saji Pierce and Ariel Bland case. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get a document today that spells out how the district is going to pay up the money that they lost. And I just want to mention Letitia James. She's the New York District Attorney that basically filed the lawsuit against ex-President Donald Trump. She has a Twitter account. I don't know, it's not called Twitter anymore, and every day, and I've got to do this, every day she posts on Twitter how much in interest Donald Trump has to pay the city of New York. And at one point, I'm going to do the same, because $8 million, $10 million is a lot of money. 8 to 10, whatever it is a lot of money to accrue interest on. And so I need to put it on Twitter. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, and I thank you for this time. I'll see you at 1:15. I yield.
Thank you, Yvette. All right, apparently that's our last speaker. The board will now convene to Conference Room 8 for closed session and is scheduled to return here for the regular meeting at 1:15. Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, February 27th, 2024, regular business meeting of the East Bay Mud Board of Directors. Director Chan is absent and excused. We will receive reports from this morning's Finance Administration Committee meeting under item 16. Madam Secretary, roll call.
Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz.
Present.
Director Lenny.
Here.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young. Here. President McIntosh.
Here, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first order of business is a proclamation recognizing Director John A. Coleman's 33 years of service on the East Bay Municipal Utility District Board of Directors. John, would you like to stand and salute?
Salute you. Sure, I'll stand and salute. What do you want me to do, Mike?
Whereas Director John A. Coleman dedicated 33 years of service representing Ward 2 on the East Bay EBMUD Board of Directors. And whereas Director John A. Coleman was first elected in 1990 and is the longest-serving elected member of the East Bay EBMUD Board. And whereas Director John A. Coleman represented East Bay EBMUD constituents in Lafayette, Walnut Creek, the town of Danville, the communities of Alamo, Black Hawk, and Diablo, and portions of Pleasant Hill and San Ramon, with unwavering dedication. And whereas Director John A. Coleman, during his tenure, played a pivotal role in shaping vital water policy, fostering increased collaboration among water agencies in the state, and was instrumental in establishing the Freeport Regional Water Authority. Excuse me. And whereas Director John A. Coleman served as president of the Association of California Water Agencies, president of the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, and held key positions in various boards and authorities, contributing significantly to the water and wastewater communities. And whereas Director John A. Coleman's leadership extended his role as chair of the Upper McCullum River Watershed Authority and as a board member of Dublin San Ramon Services District and East Bay EBMUD Regional Water Authority. Whereas Director John A. Coleman, with his extensive knowledge, experience, and support for the community, left an indelible mark on East Bay EBMUD and the East Bay as a whole. And whereas Director John A. Coleman leaves East Bay EBMUD to serve as Water Resources Manager for the Calaveras County Water District, showing his continuing commitment to ensuring safe, reliable water service to all California residents. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Lisa R. McIntosh, President of the East Bay EBMUD Board of Directors, acknowledge and honor Director John A. Coleman's 33 years of service and express gratitude for his commitment to public service, leadership, and dedication to the well-being of the communities he served. John, we are going to take a moment and present you with a framed version.
I like it.
I'm gonna miss you, John.
Merci, Jeff. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You want to read through it? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Lisa.
John.
We have one public comment for this item.
For this item, all right. Mark Foley. Hi, Mark. Come on up. Been a while.
Been a bit. President McIntosh, Vice President Patterson, good afternoon.
Good
It's a
afternoon.
pleasure to be here. It has been a few years. I just wanted to take a moment to personally thank John for his service to East Bay EBMUD. As a 30-year employee, I've had the opportunity to engage with you in my role as president of Local 2019 for 14 years. And I always appreciated your honesty, your willingness to get together and talk about issues. You're being transparent about where we can and can't go with certain items, but I just truly appreciated your leadership that you provided to the board. We will miss you. And I just wanted to say I wish you well in your next chapter, but more so that you find what you're looking for in life and really enjoy the next page in that book. So it has been a great honor to work with you, sir, and have a wonderful next chapter.
Sounds like I'm dying, but.
No, you're not dying. You are not dying. No.
Thank you.
Anyway, take care, John.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thriving. Thank you, Mark. It's good to see you. So that moves us to public comment. Madam Secretary, are there any speakers online for public comment on agenda or non-agenda items?
I have no online speakers at the moment. I believe a speaker just walked in the room.
All right, but so far, nothing online?
One hand online.
All right.
One moment.
Thank you.
So, president, and then everybody.
Lisa gets this part, and everybody gets the yellow part.
So are we ready for online?
Yes.
Whenever you're ready, Madam Secretary.
Kelly A., you should be able to unmute your mic. Kelly A.? Hi, your 3 minutes will start now.
Thanks, I'm fixing my microphone. In this report, there's going to be something about water usage and ongoing water usage, but the district is forecasting a fairly, regular increase in water demand over the next, 10 or 20 years, if you look at the urban water management plan. And if you look at the latest water consumption figures, this year so far has been average and certainly not very dry. And water consumption is not going up very much, even though things are wet. And well, maybe because things are wet, people aren't watering their lawns. And likewise, in the future, population growth projections are not, population is not rising as much as the demographic forecasts that you used would have had you believe. The population in Alameda and Contra Costa counties is not going up very much in the last couple of years. In fact, it's probably dropped slightly. So given all that, the water demand forecasts that you've been using need to be reevaluated. And you need to make sure that you're not forecasting demand growth that's a little bit too much, a little bit too rosy. Thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to our speakers for the board chambers. I have two cards, and they're both on general matters. Let's begin with Tracy King, and the subject is security. You have 3 minutes, Tracy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm coming back to you with the same issue that I came to you with at our last board meeting. Clifford at that time said that Mr. Briggs was going to send me something about it, but I haven't heard anything. I imagine his stance hasn't changed since I brought the subject up to him last year, as I brought the subject up to Clifford last year as well, and to our security manager as well. I haven't heard anything. So now my question is, who is the steward of security? Who is my teammate? Who is valuing me as an employee that I can go to that can help us solve these things? We have a one-size approach fits all, and it's not working here. A one-size approach to coming to work. I get it. You want people, you want to fill the building. If the building is, this is a public asset, you need to use it and all of that. I understand probably the city of Oakland also saying, hey, bring your people back. We need them to come and use these, restaurants and everything like that. I can totally understand, but this one-size approach isn't working for everyone if you guys are not willing to secure the building the same 24 hours a day. It just doesn't make any sense. If I come to work in the middle of the night and I see no one, unless I choose to see someone, unless I seek out someone. But otherwise, I'm locked behind a door. And when it's time for me to use the restroom or maybe go get a soda, I'm going to peep out of a peephole. I'm going to listen. I'm going to see. I have to take all these precautions just to walk in this building. And it's not fair to me as an employee. Who else has to face this type of trauma when they come to work? Nobody. And it just keeps happening and keeps happening. You guys just keep compounding on the situation. And nothing has changed and we're not doing anything different. I believe that it should be up to managers or supervisors or someone to say, hey, it's unsafe. Hey, this is not necessary. No, this person doesn't need to come to work 2 days a week to see no one, to lock themselves behind a door. So, I mean, who is my steward? Where do I go? I brought this to the public comment because I felt like the board needed to know. But where do we go? Who is valuing me as an employee? Who is valuing our off-hours team? I understand the precautions that we're taking for our field service, and I think those are very good. And I even help in keeping those people safe as well. But no one is helping in keeping me safe. And I come to you, I talk to you about it. I've talked to several people in this room about it on several occasions. It didn't just happen 2 weeks ago. I've been speaking about this for at least 6 months, and there's been nothing. Not even a security change, nothing. I can call a security guard if she's not busy. If she has help, she can come and give me an escort when I'm coming in the building at night. I feel bad for her. That what is her normal job? What is she supposed to be? What asset is she securing while she's walking around coming to get me? Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Becky?
Tracy.
Tracy, I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. You asked the question several times, who even cares? I want to say I care. I think you're bringing this to our attention last time. I've thought about it a fair amount and have talked to Clifford some. Clifford, I wouldn't mind giving you an opportunity to kind of say what's happened since you spoke. But I've had a hard time trying to figure out, I mean, this building, to the best of my knowledge, is secure at night, and if it's not, I'd certainly like to know that, or it's secure anytime our employees are here. How do you actually arrive at the office? Do you take transit, or do you drive, and do you actually go into the building?
I drive in.
So
Takes
you
4
get-
minutes from the time the garage door goes up until it goes down.
Uh-huh.
I'm watching out the whole 4 minutes to make sure that no one is coming in behind me.
Uh-huh.
I have since come on a procedure that when I come in the building, the security guard will meet me, like I say, if they have adequate staff. She'll come down the garage and meet me because there was a breach, someone was in the garage, and nobody knew until someone made a phone call. So I don't want to be the person that's making that phone call. I don't want to be the person that walks up on somebody. All I have to save me is my thermal flask and my big mouth.
Right.
That's definitely not adequate.
And what, if you could list, say, 2 or 3 things that you'd like to see changed to be able to do that?
So one thing I suggested is every time someone leaves the building off hours when there is no security in the garage, that they push the button and let security know that they're leaving. Then at that point, security can watch the camera and make sure that no one breaches the building. I feel like the same thing could be done when we're coming in the building off hours and we know there's no security there. That's one thing. But security is really far away from where we are, right? I'm on the street level, security's on the 2nd floor, but I got to drive into the basement. So there's just a lot of opportunities for people to come around. Also, because we work, I work in a locked room. No one probably doesn't even know what days I'm going to be in my locked room. So that seems like that's a little bit of a security hole there, because what if something happens? Will they know who to get out the building? Will they know where to get people out the building?
No one knows that you're here when you're here?
No, not really. I mean, my supervisor, my coworker, but she might be at her remote location. I might be coming into the office. And then that's also a thing, because when the breach happened, I was on my way into the office. My coworker is calling security, telling them I'm coming. My supervisor is going down trying to find me, but no one called me on my cell phone and told me don't come here. You know,
That's a good idea.
I'll put it
That's a
like
good
that
suggestion.
one, that phone call, as opposed to everyone. You know, I mean, that was helpful too, but
Okay, and what might be another idea that you've thought about?
I don't know. Those are some of
Okay,
them
well,
that
I
I've thought.
appreciate that, and I think those are solid and actionable type suggestions. Clifford, I wonder if you could just address the question of whether anything's been done since it's come to our attention.
Yeah, I mean, after I discussed with Dave, my understanding, and Dave, you can correct me, but staff had tried to meet with you to discuss the concerns that you raised. When you had raised the issue of somebody following you down, we had asked about this one. I asked all staff about that. And
Said someone followed me down. I said.
not follow you, but somebody came into the building. And so that was, we weren't immediately aware of what that issue was. And so I believe there was a meeting scheduled and discussion with you on, to understand more of those issues. And I think that had happened. Dave, but you can clarify, that's my understanding that had happened.
Hi, Tracy. Yeah, Clifford, my understanding, John, I know you're sitting over there. I thought when we spoke maybe a week ago that you were trying to coordinate a meeting and follow up with Tracy to get more detail about the incident she was referring to. Okay. And I believe the incident that's come up here is there was an intruder in the lower level of the garage last May of 2023. That's the last incident that I'm aware of.
So we follow up on that. You had some other suggestions that I'm not aware of that you just mentioned today that we can certainly follow up with Dave about and see what we can do. You're in the same secure area as all the operators. You're just in a different room.
They can see. I can't see anything. I'm behind. I'm in a hallway
But
behind a.
I guess what I'm
elevator
saying is
shaft. They have a visual. I don't know what I'm coming to.
the entire area is secure, right?
Understood, but when I need to leave the secure area, I don't know what I'm approaching. At least that person has a mirror, a window. They can say, "Oh, it's not a good time to go out there. There's someone I don't recognize." I don't have that luxury. I look out the peephole, I open the door and listen to see if I hear anything, and then now I've taken to yelling out, "Is anyone here?" But like I said, that's not standard procedure. And if there was a security guard on the second floor, I wouldn't have to take those types of precautions. No one else has to do that when they walk around the building, do they?
Tracy, this is about protocol, and it's really disappointing that nobody has contacted her to complete the communication since you raised this at the last board meeting. So that's disappointing, and I think we need to remedy that first and foremost. And she's telling us about all of these issues and living in a fearful state. And no one should be living in a fearful state when they enter this building.
Thank you.
It's just unacceptable.
Thank you.
So let's start some communication, find out all of the issues that she's raising and anyone else who's experiencing the same thing. And then let's get come back to us. Tell us what's been resolved, what hasn't been resolved. That just makes perfect sense. John?
Yeah, I had a question. Tracy, you come in twice a week?
I do,
And-
and I work 12-hour shifts, so
So the other days you're working remote at home?
or the other one day a week, yes, I work remotely.
And your people who work, your team members, are they the same 1 day at home, 2 days in here?
Correct.
And I would wonder, quite frankly, in a position like that, if we have people working from home, why, if the job's being done and completed satisfactorily, why they can't work from home?
That's been the question for a while.
So I just want to advise the board not to go into a deep discussion on this issue since it's not agendized. You can solicit more information from Tracy. You can provide some direction to staff and request follow-up from staff, but don't discuss or deliberate or
Okay,
take
I
action.
think, are we clear, Clifford?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to say briefly, while I am expecting acknowledgement and commitment to be working on the issue, that these are security issues that if we are, I wouldn't want us to put out a public memo that would compromise security. I'm sure that wouldn't be the
I
inclination.
feel like me coming here and telling you that security is bad is a compromise to security.
I understand
I
exactly
honestly
what you're
do,
saying.
but this was my last straw.
And so in that sense, I'm saying that I, as a board member, join my colleagues in saying that I'm expecting confirmation of a response, but to remind the public that what we want to be transparent, working directly with you and with other affected employees and making sure that the board gets the information, but we want to be careful about what's put out in a public-facing memo for security purposes.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy. And thank you, Ms. Smith, for coming this morning and talking to us about this as well.
All right, we have one other speaker for board chambers, and it's Yvette Rivera, subject general matters. You know the routine, Yvette.
Thank you, Director McIntosh. I spoke at the 11 o'clock meeting, and I talked about the amended tort complaints that I was going to bring today. I actually dropped one off at Risk Management. I provided one to Director Lisa McIntosh and one to Risha Cole. I also talked about email communication between myself and Cindy Sharon. I received an email before this meeting, in between both meetings, from Cindy Sharon. She was irritated with me. Let me tell you what the catalyst was to that email. I provided each one of you a copy of the exchange. So the catalyst was her line where she says, if I do not receive a response from you regarding a further meeting of the job audit by Wednesday, tomorrow, February the 28th, 2024, I will deem the matter concluded and proceed with the next steps. That was the catalyst. So I'm going to let that go because I have only 3 minutes, and I do want to get to Director Coleman. But I'll just, I'm going to go ahead and just say, this is one of the happiest days for me, believe it or not, at East Bay MUD. No, because I get to see you come full circle at East Bay MUD, where you bought into every bill of goods presented to you by General Counsel's office, by HR, and then you were subjected to all of the bad faith practices that many of us at East Bay MUD are subjected to. Then it went even a step up. Your wife had to come to these meetings, and I put those meetings on YouTube so that the public can see how you were treated, how Lana Coleman was treated by Director Linney and other members of the board. And still, you could have towed the company line when it came to the Saji Pierce-Enario Bland question about whether or not the district was going to proceed with going to the Ninth Circuit. And you did not toe the company line. You actually went along with Director April Chan, who I actually saw in the courtroom while that trial was happening. And I saw East Bay MUD attorneys try to throw her out of the court. What were they trying to hide? Anyway, you've come full circle, and I totally appreciate everything that you and your wife really exposed, because you could have gone out quietly into the sunset, and you didn't. Instead, you're going to make a better retirement because you're going to another agency, and East Bay MUD is going to end up paying a lot more money because of how they treated this matter. So I want to congratulate you. Please pass along my congratulations to your wife, Miss Lana Coleman. She was brave to come up here and be subjected to what she was subjected to. So thank you for your service. I yield.
Thank you, Yvette. All right, that moves us on to the consent calendar. I'd like to remove item 10 from the consent calendar. And do we have a motion for the rest and remainder?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. There's nothing further. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's unanimous. Item number 10, adopt a resolution to appoint a standby officer in Ward Number 1, my ward, for the East Bay MUD Board of Directors as outlined in the Director's Emergency Succession Plan. Dr. Ioka Nurse, will you come forward? And Risha, I don't have a resolution, do I? No?
The resolution is in your packet, but it's not, so I was not informed that you were going to actually pull item 10, but the resolution is in the board materials if you need it.
Yeah. Thank you, Clifford. All right, Ioka.
Yes.
No, that's Black History Month, Clifford.
Thank you.
All right. I'll just read a bit of this.
Go ahead.
All right. All right, the Board of Directors Emergency Succession Plan, the plan adopted on May 23rd, 2017, ensures the ongoing governance and sustainability of the district if one or more board members becomes unavailable following a state of war emergency. In the event of a state of emergency or in a local emergency, in accordance with the California Emergency Services Act. The Board of Directors has the critical task of setting policies and authorizing staff actions that support district operation. The plan was established for the board members to safeguard district functions against unplanned and unexpected absences during an emergency. Standby officers serve at the pleasure of the board and may be removed and replaced at any time with or without cause, before, during, or after an emergency. Ioka,
Yes.
we are hereby appointing you as a standby officer for Ward 1, which encompasses a majority of West Contra Costa County. And will you accept that role?
Yes, I accept.
All right. Thank you for your service. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
All right. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you, Ioka. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here, too.
President McIntosh, can I confirm that Director Patterson was the second on that motion? I know that
Were you the
Director
second or
Coleman
was
was.
John?
First, he was second.
Okay.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And you don't have to suffer through the rest. All right. That moves us to determination and discussion.
Thank you, President McIntosh. First, we have Derry Moten, our Director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, to introduce a resolution recognizing Black History Month and the 30th anniversary of the Black Employee Network.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
So today we have, again, a resolution recognizing Black History Month and the 30th anniversary of the Black Employee Network. And to provide you some background, in 1926, Carter G. Woodson, PhD, who is known as a father of Black history, initiated Black History Month to address the glaring absence of African American and Black contributions in mainstream historical narratives. Dr. Woodson, a historian and educator, recognized the systemic erasure of African American and Black achievements and sought to rectify this by highlighting the pivotal role African American Black individuals played in shaping American history and culture. In 1986, the United States Congress, in a joint resolution of the House and Senate, designated the month of February as National Black History Month. So in 1994, a group of African American Black district employees founded the Black History Committee and hosted their first annual Black History Month celebration with the mission to foster the inclusion, visibility, and advancement of district employees, particularly those that identify as Black or of African descent, and to positively represent and promote the district and Black communities throughout the district's service area. The group was chartered and became the district's first affinity group and is today operating under the name the Black Employee Network. So today we have a resolution for the board to approve that we hope you will be able to connect and honor Black History Month and the 30th anniversary of our affinity group, the Black Employee Network.
Wonderful. If there's no discussion, do we have a motion or a second?
Second.
All right. There's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Derry.
Thank you.
Derry. Next, we have our Treasury Manager here, Robbie Hannay, who will present the retirement system actuarial evaluations as of June 30th, 2023, and our recommended contribution rates for fiscal year 2025. This item was discussed this morning at the Finance Administration Committee meeting, and the committee unanimously recommended adoption of the contribution rates.
Okay, good afternoon. So I'll be going over item 12, adopting the retirement system actuarial evaluations and adopting next year's contribution rates, as the general manager said. And let's see. Okay, there we go. So just as a quick reminder, under Ordinance number 40, which we call the Retirement Ordinance, actuarial evaluations are required every 2 years. But in practice, we do them every year. That's the best practice. And then based on these actuarial evaluations, we set the retirement system contribution rates for the following year. And so that's the topic for today. There's a lot of numbers here, but it's a snapshot of the funded status of the retirement system as of June 30, 2023. And it was a good year in the markets. So our market value grew. It grew by $196 million. Like I said, because of the good returns. We have something called a valuation value of assets, which is where we smooth losses and gains over time, and that grew by $98 million. And then while our assets increased because of the investment returns and our contributions to it, our liabilities increased by a bit more. So our funded ratio went down a little bit to 74%, but still solid, and our unfunded liability grew by $61 million. And I should say that these actual evaluations were presented at the January retirement board meeting, and then they were also presented this morning at the finance committee. So they were accepted by the retirement board in January. Any questions on any of that?
I have a quick question. So we're at 74% funded. What are other agencies? Where do they stand on funded?
We had a good slide on this this morning, and I wish I had it here to show you. But it had some other agencies. I wish I had the presentation this morning. There is a consulting firm that has what they consider to be an average across the country, and it was about at 77%. You can find agencies higher than us and lower than us. We were around other water agencies, where the comparison. Oh, and by the way, most people do comparisons around the pension, which is 75.2. The health insurance one is lower. We talked about this morning, but health insurance, retiree health care funded ratios are kind of low across the board because it wasn't that long ago that they were all zero, and so we're all playing catch up. They also tend to be much smaller. So anyway, to get back to your question, here we go. So there is a consulting firm that says that 77.4% is the average across the country, and that compares to our 75.2. But you have agencies, you can find agencies with higher and lower. And then one thing about that, the comparison, I think it's a useful comparison, but there are some things that make it hard. What benefits they provide is one thing, but a big one is what assumptions they use. So we've been, for example, we assume 6.75% investment return. We've been ratcheting that down over time. It wasn't that long ago that I think we were at 8%. Every time you do that, it hurts your funded ratio because right away you're increasing it, but you're making the plans safer and more conservative. So I'd like to think that we've done a good job of making our funded ratio is already not bad, but it's based on, I think, some pretty solid assumptions that we've tightened over time.
So what's the goal to get it down to?
Well, it's actually a question came up at finance about when HIB. It's a related question. When will the funded ratio of pension and HIB meet each other? They meet each other at 100% because that is the goal. And if we were to have all of our actuarial assumptions come true, we know that won't happen, but based on those, it's fully funded, I believe, by 2044, so in 20 years.
Okay. And was there legislation or something out of Sacramento or DC that set goals, I thought, on unfunded liabilities several years ago?
Well, the most famous is PEPRA, which what it mostly did was limited the benefit to people who started 2013 and later. I would say, I don't know of a specific legislation. There are agencies and cities throughout the country that are not making every year, like what we're talking about here, an actuary comes up with, hey, this is the percent of payroll you should put aside that both covers today's employees and pays down some of the unfunded liability. We pay at least 100% of that every year. If you're doing that, you're on a path to 100%. There may be things out there where people weren't doing, like agencies weren't doing that, and it's requiring that they do it or a path to doing it. But that is what we do. We do what's recommended. So.
And last question, we're 74% or 75% unfunded, 75% funded. Where were we a decade ago?
Okay, also from this morning, thank you for whoever. Okay, we were in the mid to high 60s.
Okay, so it's improved.
We were at the kind of bottom of the Great Recession. We were 61%.
Okay.
Now the slide, if you saw it, if you go back to the late 90s, we were at 92. I mean, that was inflated.
The stock market was booming.
Stock market stuff. Also, our assumptions were not probably that was when we had the 8% rate and things like that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions on this?
But I think, Robbie, the takeaway is don't look at that number on its own. The assumptions behind those numbers are very important, and comparing agency strictly by that number can be problematic.
Yeah. It's not totally apples to apples, but obviously it's something we focus on. And I think the most important thing, we're on a path to 100. We pay down. We have an unfunded liability. We're paying that down every single year. It would be dramatic to pay it all down in 1 year, right? That would be, so it's kind of like a form of, we're paying down this liability over time, and it's a path. It's a path to getting to 100% funded. We could get there faster if markets, if we have better than 6.75% returns. And then, every year is a new valuation where we're targeting 100%, and we're kind of, I don't know, it's probably like a sailing analogy or something where we're on a path to it, and each year we recalibrate as needed.
Lisa, if I could add
Marguerite.
a couple things as a retirement board member. First is that we have consistently recommended paying, continuing our contribution from a previous year if it was higher than the recommended contribution, as a way to, we were paying it, we could keep paying it, rather than going down. Going down or even eliminating employer contributions was a popular thing to do back when pensions were very highly funded. So that I think of the 75% as a, sort of keeping us focused on, sort of doing the right thing in terms of that, and that secondly, it's a long-term investment, the same way that investment in our infrastructure is a long-term investment that we pay over time. Third, the investment track record of this pension plan is, there's very few, especially of funds our size, that can rival our performance over time. And so I end up having a great deal of confidence in our ability to continue to make that progress absent abuse of the system.
Obviously, this didn't hurt us with the 75% funded when we went to Moody's, since we got the highest rating they can provide.
And S&P, yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't.
They don't care about
This is within the range of totally fine. In fact, it's, they look at it, it's part of their numbers, but it's also very similar to, any CalPERS agency. A lot of CalPERS ones are lower than this. Most agencies are CalPERS agencies. So, no, it didn't. Now, would it be great if it was 100%? They'd be surprised. They'd be like, really? like how'd you get there? But so I guess given the rating they gave us, no, it didn't hurt us.
So I recall going back one time in the 80s with Dennis Deemer and whoever the head of our finance was, and that was a question they were asking me. was on.
Oh, yeah?
This question for the rating.
About pensions.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, there was a time where the accounting standards have improved over time to get these on the balance sheet, to have to show the world, hey, this is a real liability. And so there was a lot of focus by the rating agencies as that was happening. Frankly, I think they were probably learning about it themselves, like what does this mean or whatever. And so they still focus on it, but there was a time where there was a real peak focus, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, just a couple more slides. So we get the valuation, and then that feeds into the employer contribution rates, and the pension rate is going up a little bit. And the reason for that is higher than assumed salary increases and smoothing out of prior year investment losses. We had a tough year in 2022, like everybody else. The HIB rate actually went down a little bit, but overall, it's going up some. And so those are the rates based on the actuarial valuation. Were recommended by the retirement board to adopt these rates, which also goes to this board. And so it's been reviewed it's recommended by the actuary, recommended by the staff, and reviewed and recommended by the retirement board. And it was at the finance committee this morning. Okay, so then the employee contribution rates are set to remain the same for fiscal year 2025. The 1980 plan rates are set in the MOUs, and then the 2013 tier is governed by the state law we call PEPRA, which sets it at 50% of normal cost, and under that formula, there is no change for 2025. Okay. So to conclude, the action today is to adopt a resolution to accept the actuarial valuations and to set the retirement system contribution rates based on the valuations. And it's my understanding that the resolution was placed at your desk, that you have them in front of you, in like a physical copy.
Was there a recommendation from the committee this morning?
Yes, the committee recommended to approve.
I'll move the item.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. If there's nothing further, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right,
Thank you, Robbie.
thank you.
So at the last two Legislative Human Resource Committee meetings, we did discuss updates to the district's campaign finance reform ordinance. What we're presenting today includes the committee's recommended changes to the policy. Derek McDonald will introduce and conduct the first reading to amend the ordinance. This is also, I just want to say, an opportunity for the board to provide additional comments. And if those additional comments are agreed upon by the board, any updates will be included in the second reading for the board. Derek?
That's correct. Good afternoon, President McIntosh and members of the board. Clifford just explained the process for the adoption of the amendments to the ordinance. Today we will have what is called the first reading of the ordinance, where recommended or changes that have been discussed in committee are going to be presented to you today for further discussion. At the next board meeting, we will have the second reading, at which any changes you recommend today will have been incorporated for further review. And if you have no further changes at the second reading, we'll ask you to adopt an ordinance to amend the ordinance at that time. If you do have further revisions at the second reading, we'll ask you to continue the second reading to the next board meeting date for even more revisions and discussion. So that's how the process will work. Today, I just want to talk about the history of the campaign fine ordinance, the legal review process for the recommended revisions that the ordinance has gone through to date, recommended revisions, which will be opened up to discussion for you on different revisions, such as the campaign contribution limits, and then next steps for this process. So the Campaign Finance Reform Ordinance, a CIFRO, is authorized, but it's not required by the Elections Code. And it's interesting that most other local water and wastewater agencies do not seem to have a campaign finance ordinance, and so their campaigns are subject directly to whatever limitations apply under the Political Reform Act. But our ordinance, it regulates the financing of district elections. It was first enacted in May 1992, and it's been amended several times since, but not since 2010. And because of that, I took a look at it and decided that, well, based on some changes in the law and some best practices, it's time to revisit the CIFRO. So I took the first step. I looked at the existing ordinance to see if there were parts of the ordinance that could be clarified. And then I also looked at kind of low-hanging fruit updates to the law that should be incorporated into the ordinance, such as the Levine Act and some best practices. My revisions were then sent to our outside special counsel with expertise in campaign finance law, who incorporated further updates to the law, such as revisions to advertisement disclaimer requirements. She made recommendations on adjusting contribution limits based on the CPI adjustments since they were this was set in the ordinance, and recommended additional best practices. The proposed recommendations were presented to the Leg HR Committee on January 9th, and based on the discussion at January 9th, some other changes were made. It was again presented to the Leg HR Committee on February 13th, which requested 3 modifications. Increased the contribution limit from persons to $1,000. It's currently at $650, though it is actually based on CPI adjustments about $890 as published on our website. Increase the contribution limit from small contributor committees to $2,000. That remains at $1,200 under the ordinance. And based on an issue that Director Coleman pointed out, we've eliminated the prohibition on contracting for contractors that have made a contribution in violation of the CIFRO, and instead allowed a board member recusal from participation in approving the contract instead. And that's to address situations where maybe we have a very limited number of pool of contractors on certain contracts. And so we don't want to preclude, we don't want the ordinance to get in the way of district being able to conduct its business. So first, to open up for discussion, we'll look at some of the major revisions that have been recommended by the committee. The first was to increase, the initial recommendation to the committee was to increase the contribution from limits for persons from $600 to $900 to reflect CPI adjustments since 2010, and to increase the contribution limit for small contributor committees to $1,800, which has not been adjusted for CPI since 2010, and also to recommend an amendment to the CIFRO to allow adjustment for the small contributor committee biannually based on the CPI. At the February 13th committee, the committee requested an increase in the contribution limit set forth in the CIFRO for persons to $1,000 and for small contributor committees to $2,000. I offered to look at what other agencies do for their contribution limits. I note this is not an apples to apples comparison because other agencies have different jurisdictional sizes, different fundraising considerations, and so, but this is just to give you an overview of the contribution limits for other agencies that I could find. What I also found is that Central Sands, Contra Costa Water District, other local agencies similar to ours, didn't seem to have campaign finance reform ordinances. So they're subject to the Political Reform Act. Now, the Political Reform Act default for cities and counties is $5,500. That's the limit for persons and small contributor committees. That default limit does not apply to local districts such as us. There really is no limit set forth in law, so it can be whatever you want it to be. And then the other major change, I think, to the CIFRO is that previously it had prohibited, what we recommended to the committee was to prohibit donations from any contractor, not just for board-approved contracts, which is what was previously set forth in the CIFRO, and to prohibit a contractor who violates CIFRO's donation prohibitions from being awarded any contract, not just those that are subject to determination and not low bid. However, the committee recommended that we eliminate the prohibition and basically adopt the Political Reform Act's model under which a board member may recuse themselves from participation in deciding to award the contract if they have received a campaign contribution. So that was a change. So I think I'll pause there and just see if there's any discussion on campaign contribution limits.
Real quick, Eric, I'm trying to find it, I apologize. We didn't make a change, and I've just been flipping through it, having read it, on self-funding. There was a limit that was established, it hasn't been changed with CPI or anything. I want to say it's 5,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there was no change recommended or made to the self-funding limit.
If I would recommend that it be proportional to the other changes that we've made. It prohibits somebody, if they're, want to run, from being able to help self-fund their campaign, which means potentially there's less donations they're seeking outside. I don't know what the,
So, John, so you're saying we should also increase that?
yes. And I don't know what the right number is, but I think in terms of everything else we're changing, that should be one that's changed also to be reflective of the times. The CPI, since this was enacted, and I remember when this was enacted in 1992. And I think John Joya led the effort, if I'm not mistaken.
True.
But I would like to see it to be a higher number, so if somebody has money and they don't want to seek donations, they're not precluded from being able to run a campaign. You know, I'm not saying they're gonna be a Trump person who says, I'm not gonna take any money. And then he takes all the money and puts for legal fees. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm talking about being able to help self-fund their campaign.
So can I comment on that? I know this is an item that's in here.
It has not been previously discussed. I'm actually not finding a self-funding limit in our
Yeah,
CFRO.
it's in here,
No, there's a thing about
I was
loaning
wondering.
your campaign
Right,
no
yes.
more than $10,000. There's nothing about self-funding.
Well, that's loaning. I view that as self-funding, but loaning yourself. I remember I had to, in 1990, I had to take a second out on my house to help pay for the last couple weeks of the campaign. I don't remember the dollar amount, but it scared the hell out of me if I lost. I'm sitting in there with
Yeah, but I
liability.
I didn't think there was a self-funding limit, and I would be opposed to that, because that's,
So would I.
that seems to be unconstitutional even. And there's no other law that I'm aware of anywhere where they limit someone from,
I think it's prohibited by the Constitution.
yeah,
actually.
paying for their own campaign. So I don't think there is that in there. There is the loan
The loan is then what I think should
thing
be,
that's in there.
should be increased. I'm sorry, I misspoke in what I was
Yeah.
talking.
And even that's an interesting, I believe that was done a little bit later in the process, probably in the 2002 amendments, that was put in there.
Raising the loan limit along with prohibiting or eliminating the prohibition on entities that are doing business with the district, to me, sets up a situation of somebody getting elected and then being able to pay back their loan with large chunks of money from contractors that are doing business with the district, and then to remove themselves from consideration of board decisions under the recusal provision, which then diminishes their effectiveness and duty as a board member to make decisions on behalf of the district. So I actually have, I'm not necessarily in favor of, I could go along with this, but allowing recusal, I think require recusal of board members who have received a donation from a contractor.
Yes, that would certainly, it would be a requirement under
Yeah,
this.
well, allow and require
Right.
really two different things, so.
Yes.
But I would not be in favor of increasing the loan limit.
Doug, what was your?
I actually have, well, my overall concern is that it is not inexpensive to do a campaign that reaches the voters, the number of voters that we have in our districts. We have large districts. My ward has 120,000,
They all do.
112,000 voters, and we're all more or less the even number. And that's just a lot of people to try and communicate with. And I think in the democratic process, we want to be able to have an educated electorate about, who's running for office. And I think that the contribution limits are still too low. The $600 one is just ludicrous for being able to raise what I estimate as a $50,000 to $70,000 cost for a campaign to communicate.
It was 65,000 not 10 years ago.
Yeah.
An open seat.
you know, if you do, you know, 2 mailers and some lawn signs and things like that, I did an estimate here at a reduced universe, not even to every single voter, but just those who are likely to vote, comes to, you know, basically $25,000 per mailer. If you did that in, you know, the average cost of, or the average donation of someone, let's say $75, you got some larger donations. Some people just donated $25 or $10 or something like that. That's, what do they come up with? 900 or so donors you have to find to give to your campaign, and that's just ridiculous. I think we have to have a larger, higher limit. I'm not against limits, but I think it has to be higher so that, as with anybody who's done fundraising for an event or something like that, you have your high-end donors, the pyramid of donors, where you have a few really high donors and a lot of little donors, and that's how you come up with enough money for whatever you're fundraising for, whether it's a political campaign or a charity. And if you limit the top of that, or you cut off the top of that pyramid, so that you can't get large donations, you've got to spend all your time getting small donations, or you're just not telling voters who you are, educating them about what you stand for. And I think it's, you know, it does a disservice to our democracy. Again, there's a reason not to have, you know, 2 or 3 donors who have inordinate amount of influence with you because they've funded your campaign. But again, with a $75,000 campaign or something like that, if you had a limit of $2,500 rather than $1,000, it doesn't give anyone inordinate amount of sway over who you are, and, you know, basically not bought off by that. So I like this recommendation. I think, you know, district contractors, we haven't had this problem, thank God, probably because we've had this in place. So I continue to support that, but we've got to have some way for people to be able to, you know, raise the money. And if they have good friends or colleagues who think they're a great person and have the funding to be able to support them at a $2,500 level, I think we need to allow that so that there's enough funding for campaigns. Otherwise, nobody can afford to run for this office. That's always a problem.
And I'd just like to point out the draft language on the recusal is mandatory, so it's not optional. And then as to the campaign limit, based on your expertise on what it costs to run a campaign, it can be really whatever you want. So that was one of the key issues I'd hoped to discuss today. So I've heard $2,500.
And double that for the small contributor committees.
So Doug, is that a motion, and then Andy?
Well, I'm happy to have this discussion, but yeah, I'm ready to you know, move that as an amendment, and I kind of jumped ahead a few slides because I think it's a holistic sort of picture that you have to have.
Andy first, and then Marguerite.
I don't have the background on the February 13th committee discussion. I can appreciate the rationale for extending the original January recommendation to extend the prohibition to any district contractor, not just the board approved contracts. And I can also appreciate how that broadens the board member or candidate's ability to understand who is covered and who is prohibited, and how to spot a violation when you're expanding the universe of potential donors who could create a violation with the CFRO. But I also hear what Director Young is suggesting, that does create a risk for. I'm not as cynical about the misuse of a loan, but I do think it does create more of an opportunity for contractors to participate in elections, which I think is the purpose of restricting this, is to try to limit and restrict it. So by loosening it, we're getting away from that purpose. So I think where I'm seeing this is I'm interested in the concept of broadening to any district contractor, but I don't see allowing the ability to just allow contractors to contribute without the prohibition and then just have the board member recuse themselves. It seems like we shouldn't go there for the competitive bids. We've been doing this since, for a very long time under our current ordinance. Our current ordinance allows us to have plenty of opportunities for contributions within the community, and we have it's publicly known who are the bidders. We in recent cycles have gotten a confirmed list. It's even been in the packet that's been distributed to the candidates by the counties, because we've had that list prepared enough that we've institutionalized that. So I think where I'm trying to see this is, I see that part of the system working, where a firm prohibition for the competitive bid. Actually, let me clarify that. The firm prohibition for the existing ordinance, which is the discretionary. Could you clarify that, Council? Which is currently absolutely prohibited under our current ordinance?
Currently, well, it's called it is essentially specifications, our construction contracts that are, and materials and supplies that are required to be awarded to the low bidder, those are not subject to the CIFRA.
Okay, so it's the discretionary contracts that the board has never seen that are absolutely prohibited currently.
Correct.
And then we have had lists from the secretary prior to election season that assist us with discerning that. And that seems bright line enough that, and there is a merit to avoiding influence of a candidate, or later a director seeking reelection to influence the selection of a contractor when when there hasn't been a fair competitive bid process. So I think I'm not clear enough on the rationale for loosening that to allow exceptions and remedy that with a recusal. I'm not convinced of that, but I could understand if that were an approach that we would want to take when expanding it to the contracts that have been competitively bid, because that's new and we don't completely know how that will work. We also tend to see there could be impacts on the district's operations, but maybe we want to start to regulate in that area. Those are some of my reactions, because that's a very new element to the structure, not just inflation adjustments.
Right, and I would point out that the Political Reform Act doesn't apply to low bid contracts, and so it also doesn't. So this is a change. My understanding is that the change was meant to reflect the board's intent in 2010. I wasn't part of that, so I don't know, but we can certainly revert back. I would like to point out that what we're changing here is the remedy. A donation in violation of the CIFRO is still a violation of the CIFRO. So the main change is that rather than as a punitive measure prohibiting contracting, you would remove that punitive measure, allow contracting so as not to interfere with the district's business, required board member approval, and so.
Does that jive with your thoughts?
It is. I'm considering it. That is. I don't remember an active debate on this particular issue in 2010. So it would be interesting to see if there was any memo in OGC that deliberated about it.
I have not found
Great.
The more that we have this discussion, the more that it makes me feel like on this one, we should just leave it alone. It's been working.
So let's be clear on what it is now, because I'm not.
Right now,
Yeah, so right now, the prohibition is on any contractor, sorry, let me find it. No person who knowingly violates, no person who knowingly makes a contribution in violation of the CIFRO shall be awarded a contract which is not obtained as a result of a competitive bidding process for 1 year after the date of the violation. So in other words, no professional services contracts, as an example, could be awarded to someone who, for 1 year after the date of the violation, to someone who has made a violation.
That's the penalty part, but what's the prohibition?
Oh, the prohibition is no person who submits a contract with the district pursuant to a contract to be approved by the Board of Directors or under the authority of the Board of Directors, and that is new, and I believe it reflects the law.
The Levine Act?
I'm sorry?
The Levine Act?
But it's, I think the Attorney General's opinion that the board oversees all contracts generally that come before the district. Even if they're not actually awarded for you, they're still within your authority, and so it would be subject, you would be subject to the restriction. So it's no person who submits for the furnishing, yeah, it's basically any contract. So no person who submits a proposal to contract with the district pursuant to a contract to be awarded by the Board of Directors or under the authority of the Board of Directors for the rendition of personal services or the furnishing of any material supplies or equipment to the district or for the selling of any land or building to the district when the contract is not subject to the competitive business process shall make any contribution to a candidate at any time between submittal of the proposal for said contract and a final determination from the district to reject the proposal or if for those that were awarded the contract prior to completion of the performance of the contract. So it really applies only now to what the PRA calls competitively bid contracts, but really they are contracts that have been competed for on the basis of merit, so professional services.
Derek, time sensitivity. John has an event after this meeting, and there are a lot of people waiting.
Yes.
And apparently there are a lot of questions still here. So what do you suggest?
Well, I can't, so first of all, I would like to nail down the contract. I seem to be seeing some consensus on raising the contribution limits to $2,500 and $5,000.
I think there was a,
Yeah,
I don't
know
think
we have a
that's-
consensus yet,
yeah.
I just threw it out there.
Okay, well, then I think, given that there doesn't seem to be consensus on anything yet, then I think the best
Yeah,
option
I
is
don't think there's a
to bring this
consensus
back to the
on
second reading for further discussion, and then any changes made at the second reading will be brought to a continued reading.
all right. Is that fine with everyone?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have enough time for debate on this. It's,
Yeah,
you know,
and
it's-
I agree. I mean, tacking this on at the end
Yeah, it's one of those
is
things,
frustrating.
Well, it's only 2:30.
yeah.
Sorry.
I know. If
I
there weren't a-
appreciate there's people that are here to eat cake and celebrate, but, we have, it's been on our agenda.
So, we can bring it back? Is that?
You can bring it back as many times as you'd like, recognizing that, candidate statements will be filed, I believe, in May, or whatever your timeline is. The changes would not take effect until a month after the board's adoption of the ordinance, at which point the new limits would take effect.
It has to be done before the filing period opens for the November election.
Yeah, but this can
Ideally.
come back in March, and not just tacked on to the end of our meeting, where we have plenty of time to hash these issues out. And then I also suggest that board members, if you have a clear path, clear questions, that you submit them to Derek prior to.
Yes, and I just want to point out, so you have a draft with red lines. The green red lines show where text has been moved. So in other words, I I put the definitions in alphabetical order, so you'll see a lot of green in the definition section. But the text has not been changed in the green. The text that has been changed is shown in red, so that's the difference between the green and the red text. So as you review this, keep that in mind, and I would just ask that you review this and come with your questions and some proposed changes.
President McIntosh, we have one hand for public comment on this item once you're done with the
Okay,
discussion.
in the chamber?
Actually, online.
Online, all right. Everyone?
I think the next meeting's appropriate.
There are
Did,
other questions that people may have about things in the ordinance, but
Yeah,
whatever, I guess we're putting it over.
all right, so, our March meeting,
Okay,
okay?
I'll bring it back and.
So we are going to continue this,
Yeah.
we're just gonna continue our first reading. Basically, we're gonna have the second reading and
In March.
I'll figure it out. I'm
Okay.
not sure, I'm not quite sure if it's a continued first reading or a second reading that is then continued.
Okay.
So, but we'll figure that out.
All right.
Typically, it's two readings.
It depends on if we actually, if we voted on this exact ordinance, then
Well, we did, yeah.
we would be in a position to adopt a second reading next meeting, but it sounds like some changes could be very, very likely.
So in 2010, there was a first reading, there was a second reading. The board did not reach agreement on the changes, on further changes to the second reading. So the second reading, rather than turn into a third reading, was continued. So that was the process.
Okay. All right, thank you, dear.
public comment, yes.
Yes.
I am going to, Kelly A., you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Yes, on the issue of political contributions, it is to be noted but certainly not unexpected that the political professionals on this board, the professional campaign consultants, have their hands out and want higher campaign limits and are looking for more money to fund their campaigns as much as possible from any kind of donor. And I would also point out that members of this board of directors, one of them told me that they didn't want to hear from residents, or not residents, people outside the district who had opinions about what your district is doing. These people, they were entirely unwelcome in his mind. And they did not want to hear from non-resident people, non-East Bay MUD people, and only felt that the opinions from inside the district were the only opinions he valued. Now, when it comes to money, though, I'm sure that his hands are out, and his friends on the board's hands are out, looking for campaign contributions from anywhere, inside or outside the district, from contractors or non-contractors, from the far reaches of any geography, any counties, the states, anywhere you can get money is fine. And and of course you want to listen to those opinions when because you want to represent, they want to, you want to be aligned with your donors a little bit, or at least listen to your donors. They do deserve to be listened to. So notice the difference here. If you come with money in your hands, then you will get more of a hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
So we can add this to a future board meeting. Again, to kind of reiterate what President McIntosh stated, if you can send us your suggested edits to the ordinance ahead of time,
Yes.
that would be very helpful.
Yes, if any of you have thoughts between now, just send them to me, of course, just directly to me, and that way I can queue up the presentation for the next meeting.
Right. Okay. And it's entirely possible that board members can get their questions answered prior to the meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm just looking at the calendar and when the next meeting is. I mean, if possible, if you can get it to us by the end of this week, any other feedback you have, because we do have to prepare the board packet, which is going to go out next week.
Or,
Is it feedback or questions? Because
Both.
yeah.
Both.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer
Your
questions.
general thoughts and your questions.
Yes, and typically what I would do is, I have a BD1 to present the changes, and then I answer questions in a memorandum that is public facing so that the public can see what's been asked, and at that point it's shared between you so as not to violate the Brown Act.
And that would be given to us prior to the meeting.
It would go out with the board packet.
All right. Okay. Everyone good with that?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Derek. That moves us to item 14.
Yes, so this is about getting your approval on the appointment process to fill the Ward 2 seat that will be vacant due to the resignation of Director Coleman. You can pull up that.
We're bringing it up.
The next slide, next slide. So just a reminder, on February 13th, the board did vote to fill the vacancy by appointment. We appointed an ad hoc committee. That was Director Chan, Katz, and Young. We met with the ad hoc committee on February 15th, and we've developed the following proposed appointment process that we are going to share with you right now. Next slide. The appointment has to be made by May 7th, 60 days from the vacancy. This is in the MUD Act. The vacancy must be posted in 3 or more conspicuous locations at least 15 days before the appointment is made. Again, that is in the MUD Act. This is the minimum that has to be done. And that, just as a reminder, that appointment, that person will only serve till the November 5th general election. And then whoever gets elected in that position will only serve the remainder of Director Coleman's term, which is through 2026. So there's a few things that we need your approval on. The first is the distribution of the notice of vacancy. I'm not going to go through all the items, but you will see all the places that we are recommending, and the ad hoc committee is recommending that we post the notice of vacancy. Besides just our building, it will be every city and town office in Ward 2, the chambers, the Municipal Advisory Committee, to some of the regional agencies we work with. You'll see some of the media, newspaper, print, electronic publications, all the elected officials within Ward 2. And then Director Coleman has where he does his ward events. We have a list, and we're going to share that with everyone on that list as well. We've also, the ad hoc committee is also recommending that the notice of vacancy be sent to any individuals or groups upon request. As far as the candidate information packet, we are going to create a web page on ebmud.com that will contain all this information. You can see the 5 bullets on the information that we will be sharing about information about the position, information about East Bay MUD, including our strategic plan and financial information, information about the water and wastewater systems, our publications and construction projects within Ward 2, as well as a map of Ward 2 so they can see the scope, geographic scope of Ward 2. As far as the application process, they will be required to submit all the application material by 4:30 p.m. on Friday, March 22nd. The application will include a letter expressing their interests and qualifications, no more than 2 pages, their resume, and a minimum of 3 letters of reference. It could be submitted to us by mail, by email, or hand-delivered. And the Secretary's office will review and will advise the board which applications are submitted after the deadline. So what the ad hoc committee asked was, while we'll have a deadline, they would like to know who submitted applications post-deadline.
So Clifford, the first order of business was
The first
where to
order,
post notice? Where to post notice?
well, 2 things, where the postal notice and the actual notice of vacancy, which is attached to your board packet. And there's one change I'm aware of from the board member, which is to include in that notice of vacancy a link to the eastbaymud.com map where you can look up whether, which ward you're in. So we'll include that information as well.
And also a hyperlink to the webpage with the.
Yeah, and hyperlink to the webpage with all the materials as well. We can stop there and take a vote on the first one, or just finish. I think this is the last couple slides, and then you can vote on the entire recommendation from the ad hoc committee.
I have a quick question.
That generally doesn't work.
I have a quick question. It looks fine to me from what I'm seeing. What was discussed at the last meeting, and Director Katz brought it up, was having the committee or somebody talk to me about what my perspective is of who would be a good candidate. That so far has not happened.
As far as a good candidate?
Well, what the issues are, my perspective, and
Well, I think what was discussed was that you should provide that to Clifford
It was discussed to have be reached out to.
Yeah, I don't recall of who a good candidate would be.
I'm mistaken on the good candidate. The kind of person who would be a good fit within Ward 2, from my perspective.
My comment had been outreach materials recipients to make sure that your input was incorporated there. And it sounds like we can have additional distribution even after you leave office, because we should incorporate your local knowledge. In terms of what's a good fit, I don't think that's.
No, I'm not trying to coordinate or ordain somebody. That's not what I'm
Right.
talking about.
Yeah, just clarifying what I had said at the.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's not my understanding of what was being requested, so.
So will somebody be reaching out to me on that?
On the good fit or candidates?
Good fit, what, from my perspective, what might be a good fit for candidates? What they should be aware of with Ward 2? To be, again, it doesn't matter who the candidates are, from what Andy just talked about.
John, why don't we do this? Why don't you just submit that information to Clifford?
Okay?
Okay.
I can do that.
All right?
Okay, so given your request, President McIntosh, would the board like to take a vote on the first item, which is the notice of vacancy and the distribution plan?
And can we go back to that slide?
I'll move.
Second.
You're moving the entire list?
Yeah. I'd like to move the entire item, in the interest of time.
Well, let's do it.
You know a way to warm Lisa's heart.
The cockles of my heart. So, does anybody have any other questions, comments, thoughts? Marguerite, that's a motion to remove the entire
To move the item.
item? Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Can I just, so Director Young made the motion and Director Patterson second, and then to move the entire, so now we're moving the entire item. So the motion and the second is Director Young and Director Patterson for the entire item?
Yes, okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right.
And sorry.
It's not two separate action items, it's one action item.
We could certainly break it up the way, but we can do it all at once. I think maybe just for transparency,
Yes.
at least give me the opportunity to go through the other portions of the process.
All right,
Before we vote, that's fine.
Yes.
okay.
Go on to the next item. As far as the screening process, the secretary will do the initial screening just for completeness. Do they submit the application materials, and are they actually a resident of Ward 2? What the ad hoc committee had recommended, based on the number of applications, if there are many applications, the ad hoc committee will decide if an initial screening process is necessary, based on some predetermined criteria that the ad hoc committee has agreed upon. The final list of candidates will be brought to the full board for a final interview. We will share the interview questions with the board at the March 26th board meeting, which means that all the candidates who are going to be interviewed will know what the interview questions are, and we felt that given the short amount of time the candidates will have, that would be appropriate. The candidates will be interviewed by the board. The candidates will have 15 minutes for the entire interview, and that will be 1 minute for an opening statement, 1 minute for a closing statement, and about 2 minutes to respond to 6 questions. And again, the candidates will be able to see the questions ahead of time at that March board meeting. The board can ask any clarifying questions that will not be counted against the 15 minutes that the candidates have. The interviews will be conducted at the regular board meeting on April 9th, starting at 4 p.m. So there'll be a break between, just a break between when the last item is and a continuation of the board meeting. We do want to set aside potentially April 16th and 17th for a special board meeting. Our goal, again, is to do the interviews on April 9th. But because we want to include all this information in the notice of vacancy to make sure that the candidates reserve that time for the interview, we do want to have the board agree that if necessary, we can have a special board meeting for the interviews on April 16th or 17th. Those meetings will also be conducted at 4 p.m. the interviews will be conducted at this building, and it will be also open to anyone to participate virtually as well. This is the timeline that we discussed. Moving on to the last slide. And that's the recommendation. So this is what Director Young had moved as a motion.
Clifford, you did not mean that a candidate could participate virtually.
No, candidates have to participate in person.
All right.
But if they're public comment, they can participate virtually. And the reason why we did that is in the past, we had conducted the interviews within the ward that the board members serve, but we're in a different time where people can participate virtually, and we thought that would be more appropriate.
And I would add that Director Chan, who's not here, thought that it was, very important to have the interviews at a later time in the day in order to make it possible for, more possible for candidates, but also more possible for members of the public to, Zoom in to see the interviews in lieu of an election, and Director Katz and I concurred with that.
All right. All right, so we do have a motion
And a second.
and a second. Marguerite and Bill? On all items, if there's nothing further, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
One last item is a brief water supply update, Dave.
All right, good afternoon, President McIntosh. I'll make it brief. Let's see, first, let's just look at water production. So this is most of the way through the winter. Demands are understandably flat and low. If you look at this year compared to last year, we're about 3% above last year in terms of water production, but still about 10% below the most of the years just prior to the most recent drought, 2020. So things have been low, very, very slightly down, but overall very, very low. Looking at precipitation in the East Bay, we had a great February, almost reached average. Still have a few more days left. These numbers are a few days old, but we're not going to see anything appreciable for the rest of February, although there is quite an event forecasted for this weekend. It might start as Thursday, February 29th, so we'll see. We might take advantage of that today. More on the storm coming in shortly, but overall, looking good here in the East Bay. Upcountry, we did exceed normal for February, and the storm that is forecasted this weekend, and looking at the extended forecast, the 10-day to 15-day, we do have an open storm door with 2 or 3 storms forecast to come in. We're going to start March with a bang, and hopefully some of these numbers will be above 100% when we come back in 2 weeks. And just looking at the snow, we are above normal for depth this time of year. The snow water content, which was very, very low a couple weeks ago, it was oddly low. The snow we had accumulated so far was light and fluffy, but the last storm that came through over President's Day weekend was a very warm storm and had a lot of moisture content to it. So the water content really shot up. And this next round of storms, I think, was probably going to get us close to or above 100% on the water content as well. See you next time in 2 weeks with those numbers. The Sierra's looking good, up and down, 99% up north. Central Sierra's 82%. So we're catching up here all over the Sierras. And I just wanted to, so we show this graphic about once a year, usually around this time. I would point out that this is a 30-day outlook. Sometimes we show the 3-month outlook. This is only 30 days, which I put a little more stock in. And just a reminder that the green shades here are the probability of precipitation being above average. We don't know how much above average, but we know that the probability of getting above average precipitation is more likely in the next 30 days. And that does comport with the short range extended models, which are 10, 15 days out. Also covers the Colorado River Basin, you might notice, so that's probably another good sign for California. But we do expect a good March here. So we'll see what plays out. And last slide here, looking at storage. We've been more or less flat at around 650,000 feet in the entire system. We are making releases March 15th. So this storage will hopefully climb. As you can see, some of the hydrologies that we have forecasted have us approaching 750,000 acre feet of storage overall under the wetter hydrology, but any hydrology, I shouldn't say any, even the conservative hydrology, the 90% hydrology has us above 600,000 acre feet. So we're looking very good, and we're expecting a good March here. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And your place is the Speakers Bureau, and that's it for the reports.
All right. Reports and director comments. If there are any comments from the public on these items, please say so at this point in time. I'll deal with the appendix for addressing speech the next time. Okay.
All right. You only need to refer to that if we have that situation. That's just there for reference.
The minutes from the February 13th, 2024 Planning and / Human Resources Committee meetings were included in your agenda materials. We will now receive an update from this morning's Finance Administration Committee meeting. Director Katz.
Thank you, President McIntosh. The board already approved in closed session items that the committee, on the consent calendar that the board Finance and Administration Committee had considered this morning, including the monthly investment transactions report, and in regular deliberation, the employees' retirement system, actuarial valuations and contribution rates, as well as the revisions to district policies that were on the consent calendar. We also heard the semi-annual budget performance report and the semi-annual internal audit report. We also heard public comment as well as staff discussion about the Comanche mobile home park rent. And we may see a follow-up memo on that, and we may hear about that issue as part of our mid-cycle budget process.
All right, thank you, Director Katz. Please submit items for future consideration to the General Manager's office. Thank you, directors, if you've already submitted your written comments to the Secretary's office. Are there any verbal director comments or reports? Yes, Bill.
First, again, I'd like to reiterate my thanks to the district and the staff, and especially those members of the Black Employees Network for honoring me. As I walk through the lobby downstairs, I continue to smile at what has been placed on the wall, a portrait of me by a young man that I helped in his very, very beginning stages, celebrating many of the great African-American people who came through Oakland, which dates back to when I was over the NAACP and those years. I spent most of my time since the last meeting going to community forums, particularly those that dealt with youth and Black history. And on February 19 at Chapel of the Chimes, Oakland, the NAACP Youth Council was on program and being recognized by a program sponsored by the NAACP Oakland branch and its many affiliates, including Chapel of the Chimes. My vision for Oakland, and I've said this in most of those forums, is going back to what got us to where we were when we were successful, the crime, delinquency, all the things that are happening that are making headlines, the concerns you have about security in East Bay Mud. There was a time in Oakland when we surmounted that obstacle, and we brought together our young people. And some of them became the greatest contributors ever to grace the planet Earth. And many of them came out of West and East Oakland. And so that's been what I've kind of dedicated my time to, because you can talk all about problems, but until you get to the source and have the understanding of the gentrification that has occurred and how so many of these young people who are running rampant have no history, nothing's been passed down to them, they have not profited by the knowledge that usually families pass. And so we're garnering them into different settings and trying to bridge that gap so that they have a realization of today and their responsibility. And if they don't get involved, if they don't become part of the equation going forward, they don't have a future. And so as I report out to you today, I met my old friend, Ray Gallagher, the owner of Scott's down in Jack London Square. These are people who started in Oakland, and I was assigned to them when they began their plight. The ones that have lasted and been able to endure profited by what we learned together. And so we had a slight celebration of life. And the last time I met with him was on Dale's last birthday. He is now recovered. He himself has been sick. He is pledged to help in the struggle moving ahead. And each time I see people, Children's Fairyland of Oakland, the Oakland Zoo, all the things that I used to be in charge of that are struggling are being reinstated by some of the processes that got them there in the first place. And I just say all that to say, as we go forward today, think about the concerns of the people who have come before us to speak about district security, all the things that we're working on. And believe you me, we're working on them. Clifford has assured me that the operations, our senior staff, has these on the forefront of their agenda. And we're going to secure you. I don't want to leave here without that being said. And I thank you very much for allowing me to speak, because right now I'm in the throes of some of the last groupings that I'm ever going to meet with around persons like Kurt Flood, the ones who gave of themselves, not their monies, but of themselves for the fellow persons around them so that they could go forward. These players who are making all this money now owe all that to Kurt. At the plight, he was at the height, making more money than anybody in the business, and he looked around and said, you know, it's not about me, it's about the people out there. It's what Malcolm said. He didn't teach the followers and the Muslims to hate anyone. He taught them to love themselves. And that's what I'm trying to pass on to you, that EBMUD has a role in this, and we must come together to make our mark and make sure that we're part of the progress going forward. That's what I want to ensure. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any other verbal director comments or reports? All right, I'd just like to say before I adjourn, John, I shared with you earlier that I wouldn't be able to attend this afternoon. And it's not from lack of affection or respect. Both of those I have an immense amount for you. So thank you for your service at the district. You will be missed. And Andy has shared with me that he will read your proclamation at your event after board meeting. All right?
Thank you.
With that, we are adjourned. Our next meeting will be held on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 at 1:15 PM. This meeting is now adjourned.